Ever stopped and thought, how the fuck do I beat this game? It's great that the fan games are oftentimes harder than the games made by Scott himself. Today I have 3 of the hardest FNAF challenge nights I could find. Will I be able to beat these brutal nights? Or will they beat me? What even is this script? Anyways, without further ado, let's hop straight into our first challenge. So ladies and gentlemen, the first game for this video is Those Night at Fredbear's, the 6 AM mode. And specifically, if we go toward the extras menu and go to the custom night, it is the 2020 mode with all of the abilities turned on. Now, just to paint the picture, the game is already very difficult without this setting on, just on night 5. But when you put this setting on, it turns it into an absolute horror fest. Some things to expect is running down a hallway and randomly getting jump scared by a 8-foot puppet. And other things to expect is really strange looking illusions running through the pizzeria trying to get you. All in all, it's absolutely painful and nightmare fuel, but it is a very challenging reward. But it is beatable, kinda. Some things we need to pay attention to is firstly, the surroundings. This overall pizzeria is tight in terms of the rooms, which means we don't have much space to travel to. If we get caught in any room, this will spell an end to any attempt. And not only that, but the animatronics, Spring Freddy and Spring Bonnie, are very quick. I'm not going to go through all the mechanics because I have a whole ass video right here that you can check out with the whole game. But just let me give you a little bit of insight. The animatronics will hunt me, and if they get too close to me, I die. I know, very interesting information. The thing that makes it very hard is the puppet and its unique mechanic. It will spawn in randomly through the night, and from this point it will then be a very prominent threat. It will randomly run toward me. And when this happens, we have no way of knowing. It will just simply run toward us. It sounds terrifying, and let me just inform you, it is. Because imagine you're running, trying to get away from Spring Bonnie and Spring Freddy, and all of a sudden you die. It's a very challenging thing to keep track of this puppet entity. So challenging, in fact, that I seriously could not beat it for 3 hours straight. So I had to go ahead and play this mode with footsteps turned on, because with footsteps turned off, you literally can't hear anything. There's nothing to tell you where any animatronic is. With the footsteps turned on, this night becomes slightly more beatable, but at the same time, it does feel like cheating because every single ability should be turned on. But I had to do this to get myself some experience, and when I tell you, it still makes this night very hard. But actually hearing out for animatronics gives you a slight advantage, especially with the puppet and its unique footsteps. I mean, you can hear this guy across the pizzeria, which makes every advance that he does a little bit more manageable. And another thing with the puppet is you can't just keep the flashlight on the whole night, because more flashlight equals angry puppet. And when the puppet's eyes turn orange, you die. There's no way of beating it, it is an instant game over. The only way to deflect the puppet is when its eyes are purple. Mainly if you don't use your flashlight often and you use it sparingly, this will happen. So you kind of have to balance the puppet and then its different mood cycles. The guy's got bipolar, okay? It's got bipolar. And not only that, but it's very quick when it targets you, so there's really not much time to react. All in all, this puppet is going to be one challenging opponent. Main thing to do is keep as calm as possible. Using the flashlight for too long will blur our cover, so in a way, we have to be patient and use the flashlight only when the puppet is very close to targeting us. You will also notice these like spirits around the pizzeria. If you do get captured by the spirit, it will hold you in place right for the puppet to claim you. So avoid the spirits if you can. With the footsteps on, honestly, I can't lie, it isn't as hard as I thought. As long as you always check your surroundings and listen out for the puppet's mighty footsteps, the night itself is definitely beatable. My tactic was to run around the pizzeria in a certain pattern. I would start at the top of the pizzeria, looping around to Fredbear's curtain, which has to remain closed. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but yeah, if you keep Fredbear's curtain out for too long, it will run out and get you. Because if you let the curtains go out, then this will happen. And what do you mean, keep the curtain shut? I haven't been given any instructions to why. So you don't want that happening. My tactic was very simple, however there were a few minor inconveniences. We will start with Plush Trap. Plush Trap will spawn randomly and will jump scare the player. It won't kill you, no, don't worry. Instead, it will just make it so the animatronics will then jump scare you. So it does kill you. But I mean, there's a chance that you might survive, so do with that what you will. By keeping pretty vigilant and looking out for my surroundings, honestly, the 2020 mode with footsteps was pretty attainable. And eventually, after a couple of attempts, I would actually beat this night. However, this wasn't it. We had to do the non-footstep, which will make this challenge 50 times harder, because the footsteps was a major way I was listening out for the puppet. Without this, well, there's no way of knowing where it is. So let's get your attention to the non-footstep mode, and it is quite painful. The main way I would go around beating the night is we would start off by grabbing as many batteries as possible. We don't need too much batteries, just enough to make sure the puppet is at bay. So 1 or 2 should do fine. Then by going to Fredbear's stage, I would immediately shut the curtain. After this, we would run around the pizzeria looking out for the puppet, because by this point, we will start to see the red haze illuminate throughout the pizzeria, signifying that the puppet is out and bloodthirsty. If we keep cool and check around, we will eventually find the puppet. However, I can't lie, the first time the puppet attacks is very random. Okay, see, bro, without footsteps, you can't hear that. And can cause for some very shocking surprises. But after this, flashing the light at it, we would then repeat this as many times as possible. You are now simply trying to find a rhythm with the puppet. No, you're not dancing with it. In fact, you're just trying to make sure you keep as much space from it and try not to make it eat your head. I must say it is quite a challenging experience because the puppet tends to find ways to surprise you in very meaningful ways. By making sure I'm not spamming the flashlight, because this does make the puppet pretty angry, so try and avoid as much light as possible. He's a bit of an overreactor. But as I said before, if you're using the flashlight very sparingly and cautiously, the puppet's eyes should never turn orange. You also have to make sure you're going from room to room, because for some reason in this game, the puppet works as someone who needs to always chase you. There's also a sanity meter that isn't even explained in the game's mechanics, but overall, if you really want to beat the puppet, you just gotta run and hope for the best. Because I've looked on the forums and no one really knows how this puppet works, so yeah. When I tell you that this night took me ages, I mean, it took me yonks. However, there was one attempt that was different from the rest, because I had finally found a good spot to keep the puppet at bay. I kept just finding out where the puppet was, and there was tight moments, but I managed to just use the flashlight, and this was very much the road to something great. Because by now I hadn't even gone past 3 AM, but here we are on 4 AM with a little more than 2 hours left. My heart was pounding. My fingers were cramping, actually. I don't know what was going on there. But it was very hard to do this. There were some very close moments where the souls of the animatronics were starting to corner me off, but I also managed to encounter an animatronic that I didn't even know existed. This being the endoskeleton Fredbear. This thing has no sense of being in the pizzeria. It doesn't even make sense that it's there. It's like a spirit animatronic that kind of walks around randomly, and the main thing you have to do is keep as much space from it. And to be honest, I had no idea what this even was, and I don't really have much words to describe this thing. It just kind of happened. But the animatronic for some reason just disappeared, and I was kind of relieved, but also still kind of shocked that this happened. Anyways, we then continued throughout the pizzeria, keeping space from the puppet, and it was getting to the point where we were on 5 AM, and hold on, we might actually beat this. But you see, that wasn't going to be the case. Well, not entirely, because right at the end of 5 AM, I had managed to run straight into a dead end. Spring Freddy and Spring Bonnie came from both sides. There was no way of escaping. It was only do or die. Oh! No, no, please, 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 no! I won! Bro, I won, I literally won. I did it! Somehow, by the slither of time, I just barely managed to hit 6 AM. The reason I know this is because if you look at the main menu, there's 2 stars as opposed to 1. So we actually completed the night. However, I wouldn't say it was entirely beaten as I did die at the very end, but the game recorded it as a win, so I'm gonna record it as a win. We move on next to an absolute classic on this channel, being the iconic Post Shift 2. And fellas, what could be better than playing the 6th night of this game, aka the hardest night of the whole game. And with Post Shift 2 being regarded as one of the hardest FNAF games, this is going to be definitely something you're going to want to enjoy. So with that, let's hop straight into it. This night is so complicated that it's actually put into 4 different sections. Because if one wasn't enough, why not make 4? And there's so much to go through, so I'm just going to go ahead and just say, get ready, because there's a lot of things that are going to come out of my mouth. This night is split into different sections, 4 in particular. All these areas have different things to look out for, and the animatronics will change depending on the hour of the night. We begin with the night's 12 AM to 2 AM section, which houses the following animatronics. This being S1 Freddy, S2 Foxy, S3 Chica, and S4 Bonnie. We start with S1 Freddy, who will appear at the event walkway view. As soon as you see this glorious person, you need to go ahead and press on the mobile monitor 1, 2, 3, and 4. Very peculiar numbers, I know, but once you press all of these numbers, he goes away. Next is Foxy. If you make your way toward the cove and into stage 5, he will be present at event view. You have to now use your mobile monitor and load a voice, and this will magically get rid of Foxy. Next up is Chica, and the way Chica works is she will appear at the prototypes table. From here, you will need to equip and flip the plushie that you will have. It's this little cute Chica plushie, and if you flip it, it will make this demented looking chicken go away. And lastly is, well, Bonnie. And Bonnie will appear at the communications post view. From here, you will need to listen carefully to the current guitar variation that is playing. You will need to then select the appropriate version of this in the mobile monitor, and do note to be very careful because if you pick the wrong one, then you get jump scared. Overall, it is a pretty interesting lineup of mechanics, but it does create for some really interesting moments, like getting bombarded by 3 different things at the same time. There's a lot of things going on, but when you kind of put it down, there's actually not much. It's just kind of how the game shows its mechanics and how really weird the mechanics themselves are. Like flipping a Chica plushie literally makes no sense, but I mean, if it works, it works. Lastly is Golden Freddy, and Golden Freddy will stay at the main stage. Eventually, you will hear a speaker begin and it will say that something has become unstable. You will need to then press Q at the stage and then go to the speakers and switch the volume down. So yeah, this guy has some ear problems. The last animatronic is Shadow Freddy, but I haven't actually experienced this animatronic, so honestly, let's just assume that it doesn't exist because I have not seen it playing this game for multiple hours. When you get to 2 AM, the game then changes to the 2 AM to 4 AM, well, night. And this is by far the most infuriating mode in the whole game, and I'll tell you why right now. Firstly, there's about 6 animatronics that we need to deal with, and these are all some absolutely awfully designed animatronics. I'll start with Remnant Balloon Boy, and this piece of shit will appear at the communications post view. Now, this thing has like stomach cramps or some shit, so if you see its torso starting to open up, we need to simply click on the torso. It will go into 3 different stages, and if it opens up fully, then you're basically dead. Possibly one of the most easiest to deal with, but at the same time, just having to always go to the communications post is annoying in itself. Next up is the Minotaur Puppet, and this thing will go between all 7 cameras. Your goal is to stare at it until it goes away. And the problem with this animatronic is most of the time, you won't actually know it's in your cameras. It appears so quickly that by the time you've actually opened up your cameras, you've just been given a flashbang of Minotaur Puppet on your screen. The only way to actually fully get rid of the Minotaur Puppet is to simply go toward the main area and stare at Golden Freddy. For some reason, this somehow calms the puppet. I don't know why, but it's a way to deal with it. Because I can't lie, without this feature, I feel like I would literally be hard locked on this hour because I absolutely can't, for the life of me, find this thing on the cameras. Next up is Minotaur Baby, and this thing will randomly appear in your office staring at the computer screen. Who knows what it's watching? I can't assume anything good, but the main thing you have to do is equip your mobile monitor and view the memories that this thing has. The memories are either good or bad, and you have to simply select if it's good or bad. The game says that it may require some time to learn, but I can't lie, it's pretty easy to deal with this thing. Next up is Remnant Puppet, and this thing will reside in camera 5. When we go on camera 5, we have to see if the actual animatronic is there. And if it is there, we simply have to shift the camera view away from the puppet. Somehow, this just gets rid of the whole threat, and I'm not too sure how this even makes sense, but just that's how it works. Next up is Minotaur Balloon Boy, and this thing likes to play a little game. This game is called Hide and Listen, and you simply have to just press the button to play the game. Once you are underneath the table, you have to wait until you hear the thing leaving, and that means you're safe. So it's hide and listen, but it's also a pretty stupid game, and in my opinion has no reason to be at all this stupid. Enough Minotaur BB hate aside, the last thing is Minotaur Ballora, by far the thing I hate most. This thing will appear at the second terminal and at the vent view. When you get toward the vent view, it is our goal to go onto the camera thing or whatever this thing is and press the switch tune button. It says that you have to hear a low bass note track playing to switch the tracks, but I've just noticed if you switch the tracks, it gets rid of her most of the time. However, sometimes she will just not leave and you will just go around the whole thing and she will randomly jump scare you without you even knowing. And this is a very infuriating thing that can happen, and it has happened to me about 16 times already. Like, I'm just moving around checking all the other little shits, and then Minotaur Ballora just jumps at me like I don't know what's going on. So this thing actually nearly had me pulling my hair out. I spent about an hour trying to deal with this one animatronic, and I just hate this thing. Like, look at it. I want to punch it in the face. And there's another animatronic, and this thing is, I don't even know what this is. I believe it's Shadow Freddy that we mentioned in the previous night or hours. But apparently I was playing and the next minute I just kind of had nothing to do. I was just staring at a shadow entity. And this thing was actually kind of a blessing in disguise because the hours went by pretty quickly as it came onto my, screen. So I was staring at it for a solid 2 to 3 minutes, and this meant I actually got through 4 AM and reached the 5 AM mark just before I got jump scared by the shadow entity. So I was buzzing, we just got to 4 AM and we just managed to get the checkpoint at 4 AM. If I didn't mention previously, this game has checkpoints through the night. The checkpoints are at 4 AM and at 6 AM. Some reason you don't get a checkpoint before because screw you, go through these absolutely just awful animatronics and then get to the 4 AM mark. So I thought, hey, this is a good time playing this game. I'm going to hop off and do some other stuff, perhaps edit. And I did that. I closed the application and I went to go do some other stuff. I came back a day later to re-spark my absolutely fascination for this game. And as I hop back on, it appears I was put straight back to 12 AM. This caused me to absolutely lose my shit because I had now just thrown away the biggest advantage I would get in the whole game. It seems like the post shift 2 just gave me this massive advantage with me getting a really cheesy way to get to 4 AM and then saying, nah, go back to 12 AM and do that all again. So I now had to get back to 4 AM, but this way do it the legit way because we had to now actually play without getting a Shadow Freddy cheese. And this will take me multiple hours to get back to 4 AM because this game is brutal. The main thing I love about this game is when you get absolutely bombarded by 3 animatronics at once. This happens a lot at 12 AM to 2 AM when you get all 3, Bonnie, Chica, Freddy, and Foxy at the same time, and oh my, it's just great having my screen flashing at me every single second. And then the Minotaurs and Remnants is equally as painful, and overall, it took me over 3 hours to just even scrape to 3 AM, but eventually I would get back to 4 AM, although it did cause me to nearly lose my sanity. All that aside, we would then reach 4 AM to 6 AM, the Revenants and Remnants section. Let's go through all these beautiful animatronics, starting with Revenant Bonnie. This piece of shit will either be next to Golden Freddy on the stage or reside at the vent view just like Ballora and Foxy prior. you will need to equip and use a drone as decoy via the camera monitor. If you see Bonnie, you just go to the camera, press the decoy button, and it will just look at it like a, I don't know, like an animal and just run away. Pretty fitting for this creature, but overall, it's a pretty interesting section, and Bonnie doesn't really appear much, so we don't have to really worry about this mechanic at all. Next is Remnant Freddy. This guy makes no sense because what you're meant to do, right, is play his music box at the prototype's table. As soon as his music begins to repeat a single note, you'll need to press 4, 3, 2, and 1 in the mobile monitor. Now this specific mechanic here, repeating the single note, doesn't actually make much sense because the sound itself is the same. I couldn't tell a difference. So I would just spam just 4, 3, 2, 1 as many times as possible until I was able to reset the song via the camera monitor. This does work. It has a pretty low success rate, to be honest, because Freddy just decides to stay a long time, and when you have other animatronics just already in your face, yeah, Remnant Freddy is overall quite annoying, but that is that one aside. Next is Remnant Foxy, who will be under our table. We will need to go under there and go on our camera monitor. From here, we go to Remnant Foxy and select a negative memory. The negative memory in, well, what we're talking about is this specific one with this person with a gas mask. I'm not too sure why this is the memory that causes Foxy to tweak out, but I'm not going to ask questions. If this is what's going to make him go away, then please do so. I hate this thing. And lastly is Remnant Chica, who is exactly like her counterpart from 12 AM to 2 AM. But this one has a slightly less patient time and will jump scare you just a bit quicker, so be extra vigilant when you see or hear this thing spawn. Overall, 4 AM to 6 AM is nightmare fuel, and if you're gonna ask me, it's just about dealing with Remnant Freddy. That's the hardest part of the whole section. But in all honesty though, it is pretty beatable compared to the last two sections, and this will lead us to 6 AM, and no, we don't win. Of course we don't. We're gonna have to do another 200 seconds of absolute brutal just animatronic bullshit. When we get to 6 AM, we will then face two new entities, being Remnant's End and Amalgabot. Both of these things will have 3 different mechanics, guys, so we have a lot more to deal with, and we have 200 whole seconds. So let's go through the animatronics, starting with Remnant's End. This thing can firstly spawn in the elevator. You will hear a massive thing going, "Go to the elevator, you absolute donkey." And then once you're at the elevator, you have to simply do a very weird thing, including shutting the door and waiting 3 seconds. This then summons the entity, and you have to repeat this 3 times until you see this thing standing fully up. When this thing starts to, well, I guess get aggressive, you have to leave this section by pressing S, and that's the first way to deal with Remnant's End. The second way to deal with Remnant's End is if it appears on the stage with Golden Freddy. You will then need to go to the event view, and just like Foxy from the first 2 hours of the night, load a voice to lure him away. Once he's there, this is the third thing it can do. You will hear something kind of saying, "Go to this section, you are needed," and you simply have to just put a mask together, and this just makes Remnant's End go away. Those are all 3 ways to deal with Remnant's End. For the last animatronic, we have the Amalgabot, and this thing has as well 3 different ways to deal with it. The first way is that the Amalgabot will appear at the communications post view. All we need to do is equip the Bonnie mask, and this will scare the thing away because it's an absolute bitch. The next thing is the Amalgabot will appear at the prototype's table view. We simply have to stop the music from playing using our camera monitor. We will have to search the cameras for this button, and after we find the button, we have to simply press it and press it again until it goes away. This button is a bit stubborn and sometimes will not go away, so you kind of have to wait and wait until the button just disappears. It can take some time, but if you're patient enough, it should go away after 4 to 5 times. With everything else I've said previously in the night, this can become infuriating, so let's move into the last mechanic, being that the Amalgabot can appear underneath the prototype table. If this happens, simply view the camera monitor and go to cam 1, 2, and 4 and look for the auto protocol button. This will lure Amalgabot back into one of the rooms, meaning that you don't have to deal with it anymore. That is it for the Amalgabot and Remnant's End, and overall, this doesn't sound too bad compared to the other areas of the night. The only problem is I wish that was as simple as it sounds, because with everything I've mentioned, this night does have some balance issues, and the first thing is the Revenant's End. This thing is very stubborn. It will appear and jump scare you very quickly after appearing. So you have to take care of it as quick as possible because it's not patient and will get you if you're not careful. The Amalgabot is slightly easier to deal with, but then again, still always get rid of this thing as soon as possible. Overall, it was tough to beat this night, and realistically, I don't think I was mentally prepared for the sheer pain that this 200 seconds would bring upon me. But as I have done throughout this whole game, I kept calm, I didn't break anything surprisingly, and all I wanted to do was get to that 0-second mark. But even when I got to that point, and it did happen, something wasn't right because I wasn't beating the game. So I had to go ahead and check, why isn't Post Shift 2 being beaten? And to my surprise, there was one more thing we had to do. We had to first deliver the web line, which is this game's little like mandatory task. It's kind of taking inspiration from FNAF 6, but it's also kind of bullshit. Enough complaining aside, once we do the web line, we then have to deliver the orders, which is this game's, again, the like FNAF 6 type of thing. And when that's done and you get to 0 seconds, then you complete the night. So I managed to get to 0 seconds and I had to just keep calm because I was stressing. I was so nervous and anxious. And when I finally made that final delivery and it finally just worked and I saw my screen, good job, and Freddy staring at me, at that point I knew that it was over. We just managed to beat one of the hardest nights in FNAF fan game history. And with that, the game goes into some really deep cutscene with, look, I don't know the lore of this game, right? But all I'm seeing is a bunch of random stuff and then Bonnie, and that's it. So in all honesty though, this challenge was an absolute mighty task, but after beating it, yeah, I am never, ever returning to this game ever again. This game is called Those Nights at Fredbear's New Destiny. Before starting this game, we get a really prominent warning that there's jump scares, flashing lights, loud noises, and you can already tell this game is going to be the scariest one just by the warning itself. So the first thing we see is a cutscene, and the camera zooms into the Fredbear's diner, and we get some dialogue on what's happening in the pizzeria. Essentially, some guy is, well, doing some stuff, and basically we need to investigate what's happening inside the animatronic. So we get into the establishment, we grab our flashlight, and our job now is to find the office. This place is massive. I remember first spawning in and being absolutely just stunned on how big the building is. Like, scale wise, this game is just huge. So yeah, we get to the office and we find a nice camera feed which gives us all the cameras around the building. This building has a whopping 23 cameras. Like, looking at the map, this building is humongous. Like, why do you need 23 different rooms in a Fredbear pizzeria? It makes no sense, but nonetheless, to conclude this shift, I would get familiar with the layout of the building, and by this point, it was time to leave and begin our night 1 shift. So we enter our first night, and Phone Guy gives us a little quick demo on what we need to look out for. He's not really too helpful. In fact, he's the complete opposite. He pretty much just tells us good luck, and that's about it. I found some sticky notes around the office, and these sticky notes pretty much outlined what I was doing, kind of what to look out for, you know, glowing eyes, not good, stuff like that. Everything was all nice until around 3 AM hit, and I noticed that my generator usage was becoming a lot higher as I was closing doors because I was panicking, and this led to my actual power running low. So I had to make a very quick dart toward the generator room. I got to the room and my power had already drained. I was being very cautious, and this actually led to my downfall because now I had to face whatever happened at the power outage sequence. So I ran frantically to a corner and yeah, I screamed a bit. So I reattempt night 1, and this time I actually went to the generator a lot earlier to refill it, and this worked. So I went back to my office, and as I was going back, someone was actually already in the office, and this was Spring Bonnie. So I started screaming and running the other way, and I was just hoping that this would be not the end of my night. So I looped Bonnie around the building and went back to my office and shut both doors, and this got rid of the animatronic threat. I then remained in the office for the rest of the night, checking both hallways ever so often, and this would get me the night completion. The next night, we are basically told that we have no jurisdiction and that us seeing the animatronics means nothing, and that's great because we pretty much have to continue our shift like nothing happened. So as I said before, Phone Guy, pretty useless, but nonetheless, new night, and now we have to say hello to Spring Freddy. This animatronic is essentially the same as Spring Bonnie, but now we have two animatronics to take care of, so it's a little bit harder. So for this night, what I actually did is I went to the generator room, I just refilled the generator, and I noticed that with these two animatronics, they only go toward the office. So me using my massive brain, I stayed in the generator room and camped there because I literally had nothing to worry about. So this worked and I got the night completion pretty easily. And you can say this is cheating, but as the nights continue, this won't be usable, trust me. I would make my way toward the generator room as my power was getting pretty low. As I was making my way toward the room, Spring Bonnie saw me, and this initiated a chase where I was running around the pizzeria just headlessly, and this eventually led me to Spring Freddy, and I got pretty much crushed by the two animatronics, so good start to night 3. I also forgot to mention that there's a new animatronic in this night, which is Plushtrap. The way Plushtrap works is he will go from shelf to shelf until he reaches the generator room. By this point, he will completely deactivate the generator, and if you haven't already gotten rid of Plushtrap, he will essentially give you a game over, so don't do that. The way I dealt with Plushtrap is I literally grabbed him and I chucked him to a shelf across the pizzeria, so that was pretty nice. And each time Plushtrap did end up going back to the generator, I kept just going back and forth, putting him down on the shelf, and this ended up getting me the night completion, and we would get to night 4, where we now had to say hello to the man himself, Fredbear. How Fredbear works is he will eventually go off his stage, and by this point he will track you down. Like, he will literally go from one side of the pizzeria to your exact location, and you either have to hide or run. But running is not that wise because he's literally faster than you. So yeah, you're screwed. So how I went through this night is I would have a strategy where I would go to the generator room. I would then wait for Plushtrap inside the room. And at this point, I would refill the generator, take Plushtrap back toward the shelf, and do this to around 4 AM. Then I would go back toward my office and stay here. And this was probably the worst part of the night because going to the office meant either Spring Bonnie or Spring Freddy would see me, and it would instantly initiate a chase. So that was terrifying. I would then close both doors, and by this point it was time to check for Fredbear. And now it was time to make a last ditch run to the exit door, because in this game, if you get to 6 AM, you don't actually win. You have to exit the building, and the exit door is located on the other side of the building. So this means I have to run away from all the animatronics at the end of the night. So here are some compilations of me running from the animatronics at the last hour of the night. Enjoy. Oh no. It was time for night 5, and this is where things got extremely hard. All the animatronics were extremely aggressive, and I had to adapt to this new level of aggression. So what I found out is that by having Plushtrap in the generator room, I could actually stall him. With Plushtrap, if you pick him up and take him to a shelf, every 3 times you do this, there's a chance that he will bite you. So by letting Plushtrap go from shelf to shelf in the generator room, I could prevent him from going into the generator and at the same time keep him at bay. And by doing this, all the other animatronics will pretty much not even be in the night. The only animatronic being Fredbear, but when Fredbear enters the room and checks for me, I hide in the generator until he leaves, and then I continue the method. This at first was a little bit hard, and I kind of had to change my whole playstyle, but eventually I would get later and later into the night. And I beat night 5, but I actually didn't record it. I somehow forgot to record night 5 being completed. So because of that, I will complete the 2020 mode for you guys, which is the hardest mode in this game, and actually hasn't been tested to be completed. So I hope that kind of makes things a lot less, bad. So it was clear this mode from the get-go was gonna be brutally tough, but I had devised a plan that could potentially see us completing this night and therefore making it somewhat possible. So this is how it would go. Essentially, on the beginning of the night, I would make my way to the generator room. I would ignore every single animatronic except Plushtrap and Fredbear, and that would pretty much eliminate half the animatronics in the game. When I got to the generator room, it was a matter of just keeping Plushtrap at bay. I learned pretty early on that Plushtrap works as so. There's certain areas where Plushtrap is more likely to go back to the old shelf than he is from going to the new shelf. I kept Plushtrap in a certain area where he would always go to his old shelf, which was around this point of the map. The red dots on the map signify his movesets and where he would go from one area to the other. By using my flashlight as Plushtrap gets toward this area, he is always more likely to go back to the old shelf than he is going to the new shelf. And this eliminates the threat of me being bit because I actually don't need to grab Plushtrap, only if he gets too close to the generator room and I feel that it is too unsafe. This strat was just me experimenting with the game because I knew that me running around with the animatronics would simply not work. So here we are, and honestly it works pretty well. If you get really good at Plushtrap RNG, you can even keep him before the shelf, which is pretty good because as long as he doesn't get toward the generator, you're pretty much good to go. I would attempt this night for multiple hours. The main issue was Fredbear, and when he entered my room, if I was, dealing with Plushtrap and this happened, it was essentially a game over. Another issue was when Plushtrap bites me. This happens once every 3 times you grab him, and if you're not careful, it can really be dangerous, especially if you're already in the generator room itself. So to be safe, I would often just put Plushtrap on the shelf every 2 goes as to not risk going through a power outage. So eventually I would get a really good run. However, at around 5:50 AM, Plushtrap would enter my generator, and this would initiate a power outage sequence. With not much time left, I would make my way directly toward the exit. All that remained was Fredbear, and thankfully, he didn't become aggressive until I left the building. If Fredbear had become active, it would have been a very close exit. But that concludes the max difficulty night in Those Nights at Freddy's. To conclude, we get this really cool animation of all the animatronics staring us down with text saying that it's over now. So we also get the extras menu, and here we can see all the animatronics in all their glory. I just found that the size of Plushtrap compared to everything else was just absolutely hilarious. Like, look at this little dude. It's kind of insane how he became the most dangerous animatronic in this whole game. We also get some cool behind the scenes of the game's development and just some really awesome pictures of the animatronics. Yeah. And with that, that's about it. That was Those Nights at Freddy's. Overall, a very fun and scary FNAF game. It is a remake of Nixon's original back in 2015, but nonetheless, it is an awesome, just kind of homage to Nixon's game. So very well done. And that's pretty much it for this video. If you guys have enjoyed, please smash a like, and if you never want to miss out on a future upload, then please consider subscribing as well. On screen here is a video where I play every single FNAF game. Well, not every, but like over 120 games. So it's a long video, so if you want to go ahead and check that out, then it's right here for you. But anyways, until next time, take it easy and goodbye.